What's going on? Welcome back to another Game Time Discussions. I'm Emory Cuzzy. I'm here with Cameron Selby, and we are going to be doing our 2.0 rankings for the wide receivers and tight ends today. Super exciting. Cam has been working really hard on this presentation and getting into all these guys. He's got lots of fun names, higher and lower, of course, than the consensus, and we're going to ride, of course, on that. So let's get into it.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of this is I feel like there's been more receiver movement than there has been on any other position. One, because it's a bigger position, we're actually ranking 60, and then also because, I mean, there's a lot of suspensions, injuries coming from that position. So it's just we're trying to move as we can and take the stance where we want to.
Sure. Tier
So,
1 hasn't moved, as you can see, though.
mhm.
CD Lamb, number 2. That has actually kind of become consensus across the board, which is really cool to see over a Justin Jefferson. CD being in the offense with the Dak Prescott, possibly playing from behind some. Dak loves playing from behind. We all know that when it comes to fantasy points. And so CD being number 2, JJ moving to 3. Everybody still loves JJ. It's not a problem. It's just a different quarterback situation. And then Jamar Chase, he's the best receiver in
He's the
football, and he
fancy.
is the best quarterback in the group. So
Yeah, I mean, the only thing I would say about the tier, the order hasn't changed. I think the gap between CD and Justin slightly has increased,
sure,
and that has a lot to do with the Justin injury. He hasn't been participating, also because JJ McCarthy, you just don't know what he is capable from a fantasy perspective this year. So with that being said, we're just kind of riding with what we've got and feel kind of good about the stand that we took early on.
yeah, absolutely. This has switched in the like overall, but for us, we did this off the rip, so we felt good about
Right.
it. Let's go over to tier 2 though. Pretty easy transition. Only 3 guys on that first tier, but on the second tier, there's eight players here. Kind of your consensus late first round or to the end of the second round guys. I think that my only complaint or disagreement is I have Malik Neighbors a little bit farther back. Just kind of give me a reason that Malik Neighbors hangs out at 7. But otherwise, I think it's a real
Well,
great tier.
I mean, I think this is basically everybody's 8, and everybody just has a different order with how they want these guys to be moved. We took an early stand on Nico being
Mm-hmm.
wide receiver 4. He was actually 5 in the initial ranking. We actually moved him a spot up ahead of Puka. Puka has a little bit of a situation. One, target competition now with Devontae, but then also Matthew Stafford's back injury keeps on lingering, and he was supposed to practice Monday. We're recording this as a Thursday, and he still has not. And they bought him a whole, you know, Airbnb chamber, whatever you want to call it, to try to help him recover. So
Yeah.
it's a little bit of uncertainty with him. Amon-Ra, awesome. He's been very steady, consistent, but it's just new OC. He has the most target competition amongst this entire group, I would say, with the exception of AJ. But AJ is kind of more volatile because he's the big play guy, not the PPR guy. And then with Malik Neighbors, like you said, I think he has the least amount of competition for target share. I mean, his next best guy is Wanda Robinson, Darius Slayton. That's just not even close. The only thing is the touchdown equity. I don't know if it's going to be there. It's one of the lowest projected scoring offenses. So he could have 110 receptions for 1,400 yards and 4 touchdowns, and that keeps him kind of his floor down to like wide receiver 9. And I just don't know if he can really exceed from his wide receiver 7. I think he finished last year. That's kind of right where I have him, is like he will probably finish in this tier if he is healthy, but I just don't know if he can go even higher than that.
Yeah, I think the ceiling is capped, like you're saying, because of the touchdown equity. But yeah, the floor is really nice. I think that he is a floor player for sure. Going to get a ton of targets in an offense that's going to have a probably really rough go of definitely of a schedule and stuff like that. So
Right.
let's go over to tier 3 and talk about some of the guys that we. All right, so honestly, this tier, I almost was like, hey, we should split this tier into 2. I understand completely why it's 1, but you just look at those top 5 guys, and I'm like, those 5 guys are so hard to parse. I don't know that I could put either any Xavier, Tyreek, Terry, or Mike in that like next group, even if I think there's a little bit of a gap. But if you just talk about some of these guys, DJ Moore is probably the best at ADP by far. And I think there's some case to make that he could be in front of Devontae or even a Garrett Wilson, depending on how you look at him. This group is just a really fun group, in my opinion, that is really hard to just figure out who you want.
Yeah, to me, this is just purely an at cost range. It is a very polarizing range. A lot of volatility starting. There's not a ton of floor with a lot of these guys. There's like low target volume but high big play upside with guys like Worthy, Tyreek Hill. But then there's like the Terry McLaurin who broke out with 13 touchdowns, but that only got him to being a wide receiver, low end wide receiver one,
Right.
and that is only high end finished before. So as a 30-plus year old with the trade request pending, how much better is it going to get? That's He was in our tier two, has bumped down since that trade request because he's just kind of there. Marvin did jump because, from a redraft perspective, he is actually one of the best values because he's a mid to late fourth rounder. We've been doing a lot of best ball, and he's kind of crept up to kind of right where we have him in overall rankings.
Hmm.
JSN is steady. It's just an unknown because Sam Darnold, new system and new team. Was that last year a mirage with a great situation, or is he actually capable of producing fantasy relevant players? Garrett Wilson, kind of similar to Malik Neighbors, where he has no competition, probably even less
Less.
competition
Yeah.
from target share. But also, he's never been a touchdown guy. I mean, a couple years ago, when he was one of the highest target share leaders in the NFL, he finished with 3 touchdowns. So it's one of those things where you're banking on a narrative of him reuniting with his old quarterback in college, but at the same time, you just still don't know if he's capable of breaking that threshold at least this year.
Yeah, no confidence with the Jets. That's unfortunate.
Hmm.
And then, kind of the other guys on this group, at least I think they have, well, JSN has a Sam Darnold that we're not really sure about yet, but of course had a better year. But we know that Kyler, Matthew Stafford, we believe in Caleb, those types of guys, and then of course Patrick Mahomes too. That there's some good quarterbacks on this list to get the ball to their number one receivers. All these guys are the number ones on their offense, except for Devontae and
Right.
yeah, Devontae. So,
Devontae,
um,
yeah, and Mike Evans, who has jumped up into this tier because now it's just increasingly less likely that Godwin's ready to start the year, but also both, 30-plus-year-old guys that, um,
it's
30
all good.
plus year old 30-plus-year-old guys that have not only situations that are brand new, either with a new quarterback, new system, or with a new coordinator, and then also aging out. So how much longer can they hold on to being a fantasy relevant player?
Absolutely. Yeah, let's go over to tier four. Tier four is it's an interesting tier because we have some guys that are a little bit higher. Of course, if you look up there, Rome is a little bit higher than most. We have a guy that's a little bit lower in T than most people are going to rank them. But there's a couple rookies. It's actually a tier, like, I think that if you sort it correctly, this is where you win leagues.
Oh yeah.
If you think Cortland is the guy, like, you make sure you get him on your team. If you think Tet's going to break out like he did in his preseason game, looked great. You get him on your team, type of thing. So I think this tier is really interesting on like league winning upside type of tier.
Yeah, and this might have the most movement, or relevant movement, with it. I mean, I do feel good about the first three: Devontae Smith, Cortland Sutton, and T, but it's just not price thing. And T was going at the 2-3 turn when we were doing our first rankings. Now he's kind of fallen a little bit, to where it's kind of a little bit more intriguing because,
Mm-hmm.
like we've said before, when we were starting with the Jamar Chase build, we were kind of going with the Chase Brown mold. Well, now they've completely flipped an ADP, and so now it's less common to do the T and Jamar.
Mm-hmm.
So that's just one of those things that you got to play around with. Devontae Smith apparently has been one of the biggest Philadelphia standouts in camp, but at the same time, he's just competing with Saquon and Dallas Goedert, AJ Brown, and then Jalen Hurts, who is a rushing touchdown, low passing volume quarterback. So it's one of those things that if one guy goes down, he could be a league winner. But if everybody stays healthy, then he's just kind of capped at being, a mid to late wide receiver too. So that's kind of
Sure.
the frustrating thing with him.
Yeah, absolutely. I saw that Stephon Diggs made it all the way into this tier.
Hmm.
I think he was in, like, ranking wise in this tier, but I don't think we actually had him in tier four in the first one. He's an interesting name. He's had a really good camp coming off his injury from last year. Drake May is a guy we're kind of betting on going into year two. So I think that the Diggs shout out is really, really fun to get into this tier.
Yeah, and he was knocking right at the door. We had a big stand on him being, I think he was 29th in our
Hmm.
1.0 rankings. He and Jacoby were knocking on the door of this next tier. But the fact that he started camp fully go fully healthy while everybody else is just like wait and see still or recouping, recovering, or limited. That's good to see. On top of that, Kyle Williams, even though he was a lot of June and May best ball hype,
Right.
hasn't even broken into three receiver sets, so it's just less, I think, competition, and
Mm-hmm.
I just feel good about where he's at to, you know, be a high volume guy at least early in the year. So maybe he's a sell high guy at the trade deadline for your redraft and your buddy leagues, but at the same time, I think it's really nice leverage. Now his ADP has risen 2 full rounds almost since the start of best ball season. So
Mm-hmm.
we were on the right side of things. We got our exposure where we could, and now since he is now in this tier, he's my least interested of this tier, but he's going right where he should have been going a long time ago.
Right, absolutely. Let's go over to the next tier, tier five. Talk about Jacoby Myers. Jacoby being all the way up at 30 for us. There's a lot of guys actually that have moved a ton. If you ask me in this tier, um, a guy that Rashee Rice, he's moved down a good amount because of the suspension, the pending suspension. And then if you look at Ricky Pearsall's jumped, I don't know, probably 13 to 15 spots because of the fact that we just have a little bit more clarity on the San Francisco situation. I think this is a interesting tier. This is where I get a little bit nervous though. Is this tier when you're talking about just, hey, can I get this guy as my wide receiver too? I don't think you can do that anymore, except for maybe Jacoby. That's the only guy
Yeah,
I'm
I,
like,
I think
hey, maybe.
this is the harder one unless you play in really deep leagues that if you have a couple of those guys, I don't know from a week to week basis who's going to be the guy that works out best for you. And it's going to frustrate you a lot if that's what you got to do is if these are your wide receiver twos or threes and you have to start one to two of them, making those decisions is really frustrating and tough. Rashid, you mentioned, was one of our biggest fallers, and it was because we weren't even anticipating the suspension actually happening this year. It was more so he's coming off an ACL tear, and I know he's been limited and looking good in highlight videos and stuff like that. But a lot of people were hyping up his production in 2023, but that was all without Xavier Worthy. But with Xavier Worthy, when he was breaking out and had as relevant of a fantasy ending in 2024, that was without Rasheed Rice. But
Hmm.
everybody wants to discount that because Rasheed Rice wasn't there. It's like, well, you have to do it both ways if you're doing it. We actually had them in the same tier, basically right next to each other. And now because we know he'll be missing 4 to 6 games, he's back in this range, and I I'm intrigued by him. I think it'll do better. I think in the long run, if you are a Rasheed Rice lover, it's better that he is to sit because he is also coming off that knee injury to where you would have been forced as a second, third round pick to start him in basically
Hmm.
every week if you had the choice to. And I don't know if it would have worked out as well as you thought. But now that you know that he will be out, you can put him on your bench, put somebody else in, and then by the time he comes back in week 5, 6, whatever it is, he'll be way more healthier, ready to go. And I think you could put a little bit more confidence in him.
Yeah, price matters, of course. When he was going in the second, third round, it was a little uncomfortable. A guy like George Pickens is going much earlier than the ranking he has. DK is going much earlier. Jalen Waddle, and so we probably just won't get very much of those guys because of their ranking. If you look at a guy like Zay, even Zay's going in the fifth round. So it's more so price. I'm getting a lot more. I got a lot more Ricky Pearsall when he was much later in drafts than I
Right.
am now because he's in like the 60s. So price will matter, but this tier is a little bit shaky if you want them as wide receiver twos.
Yeah, with Zay, it's a little controversial that he is this far in this tier, but I
Mm-hmm.
just am concerned the fact that Lamar comes off his probably best statistical year, 41 touchdowns, and only four go to your wide receiver one in your own offense. So
Right.
I just don't like that at all. He's never been a high target guy. I mean, there was one week last year where we were playing a DFS slate for the main, and he had 6 for 100 in the first half and didn't have to catch the rest of the game.
Yeah, I
So it's
remember that.
just it's so frustrating to invest in him. Jacoby's a great floor guy, like you said. DK, it just doesn't fit, and we're just completely off him at his price right now. I think Waddle and George Pickens are some that I might be scared of. I was a little lighter on when they were discounted because now their ADPs have risen to where I'm just not interested anymore. But Jalen Waddle was a seventh round pick earlier in the summer. George Pickens before he even got traded, and then after he got traded, there was a big time frame, couple week time frame where you could have jammed in your, at the field shares of him, and we just didn't. And so I hope it works out, but he's making plays left and right in camp. So it's just one of those things.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's go over to tier 6. Talk about one of the biggest risers of any position, any player, Emeka Ibuka. He starts
My
off
guy.
this tier, and Emeka is, getting a lot of opportunities in camp because we don't know what's going to happen with Chris Godwin. Chris Godwin's not even in the top 48, as you can tell. So he's not even wide receiver 4 for us due to injury, due to uncertainty. But Emeka is making a lot of plays in camp, doing really good. He is a polarizing name on this list, to say the least. There's a couple of other guys that, of course, we have to talk about, though. Khalil Shakur still injured. Not sure what's going to happen with him. Debo is basically hanging on the fact that if we don't see Terry McLaurin come back to the Commanders, he could be a guy that goes up a little bit higher. And then I want to talk about Matthew Golden because he is now in this tier and a little bit higher than we probably expected him earlier in the year. So,
Yeah, so starting with the Mecca, I think it's a really fun topic of conversation. In our league winner video, he's been just being clicked left and right if you've been following our best ball streams over the last couple of weeks. But the problem is that now he's going in the range of tier 4.
mm-hmm,
So we got all the shares we could because we knew it was trending this way because all the reports were right. He's in an aging receiver room. Chris Godwin, like you said, is not being healthy. They've got an easy schedule in weeks 15 through 17 in the money weeks of your fantasy seasons, whatever platform you're playing on. And now it's just kind of out of price range. But we hammered him enough to where we feel comfortable we're going to have over 20% of him and feel
mm-hmm,
good about it. But at the same time, once they're all in the room together. I just don't. It's a wait and see with his upside when everybody's healthy. But it is going to be a high passing volume offense, so we'll see what happens. But I've loved him. Talked about him all summer, whether it was in the draft, in fantasy, and we like where we're at with him. But he is still kind of a little bit capped, and that's why he's down at this tier. And then if we're going to flip to the other rookie, Matthew Golden, I think it's very intriguing because he's also having a sneaky good camp. He has less competition in terms of just the high variance and volume targets, but also Jaden Reed now being in a boot, apparently being uncertain for week 1, that just gives him more opportunity. In his first preseason game, had 100% of the snaps with the ones, and even in 2 receiver sets. And so it's just one of those things where he's on, as long as he's healthy, he's going to be a safe option where he's going. And he is also starting to rise a little bit into an uncomfort zone for ADP as well. So
yeah.
um, feel solid about him if you got him at the right price. If you invested in shares earlier, we did not. But at the end of the day, he's in a good situation to start out the season pretty strong.
Yeah, he is starting on the outside. Christian Watson is basically a shell of himself, so he will not be the guy. Romeo Dobbs is out there running routes, so he's probably going to start at the other spot. And then Jaden Reed will be the slot receiver when he is healthy. So, and I'm sure when Jaden Reed comes back, he will take over his slot receiver stuff. So I'm not really worried about that part. He will play. But yeah,
Mhm.
this is an interesting group. I think the next couple tiers are kind of getting into the weeds of like, I'll pull up tier 7 if it lets me. There it goes. So the next couple tiers, are getting into the weeds of like guys that you just stash at the end of your drafts. Um, Cooper Kupp, of course, going to Seattle after he kind of fell apart last year. A Chris Godwin, who we don't know, still injured. Rashad Bateman could be the number one, I guess, for Lamar Jackson, but not a high passing offense. Jaden Higgins is a complete question mark because I don't know what to do with him. I don't know what to do with the Houston offense. I swear to God, it's super difficult over there. And then Luther
Mhm.
Burton is basically the 4th wide receiver right now, and Keenan Allen just got to the Chargers.
Yeah, this is just very polarizing topic. A bunch of vets that you don't know what to do with. Rashad Bateman had a breakout year from touchdown perspective, but also it's the 2 catches, 40 yards, and a score was when he was relevant. There was very few of the huge boom games, and he's going in the wide receiver 5 range where you kind of need a little bit more than that. So it's kind of tough. Higgins has the best path to me of having the most relevance in this tier, but at the same time, like you said, we have no idea what to do with the Houston offense. Where we just kind of took the stand when he was in the 110s and 120s to not take him, and it's kind of like one of those hope it works out. We don't sprinkle 8% every single spot. We have to take stands places, and
Hmm.
it's funny with Keenan Allen recently signed reunited with the Chargers. I forgot that he was even in our original top 60 because I know we were taking a ton of him and we were like, he's going to be signed. He's going to be signed. And then we do our rankings. He was actually wide receiver 60. And then a month goes by, he's still not signed. And then there's not updates. And so we're just like, okay, well, we got over 30%. We're going to, take it easy a little bit. And then he reunites with the Chargers. I don't know if it's just that narrative or just the fact that, Mike Williams retires. Quinn Johnston has not worked out and it's just unknown. But now we been seeing him picked in the top 100 in the 110s. We're no thank you at that price, but at the same time, we got what we needed to when he was a wide receiver 7 or 8 way
Right.
back when, which feels like an eternity ago. So it's a funny thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Pretty easy group though. I think if I had to pick one, like you said, I guess Jaden Higgins is my guy, but it's not very comfortable. Keenan Allen and Jaden Higgins are probably the two that I'm going to take at ADP. Or sorry, I'll take Keenan Allen at original ADP, but all the other guys they're kind of pushed up. Luther Burden's actually the farthest in ADP out of this group, so he might be the guy you get the most of at the end of
Yeah,
the day.
we'll see because I know Chicago is going to play a lot of
Hmm.
ones and starter snaps because they refrained from doing that in preseason one. So Sunday that'll be one to watch because of the fact that if he catches a touchdown, obviously that's going to make his ADP spike 40 because that's how
Sure.
things go nowadays.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's go over to tier eight. Some of your late flyers that have upside. You're looking at Pop Douglas to start it out. We don't know, so we know Stephon Diggs is the number one, but we don't know who the number two is for the New England Patriots. It could be, I guess, Hunter Henry. It could be Kyle Williams. There's some names down the list, but I don't think any of them are really as efficient as Pop Douglas has been. And then Trey Harris is an interesting name. Now that Keenan Allen is there, you see that Keenan has jumped over him. He's above him on this list. Brandon Ayuk will be missing probably 4 games to start out the year on the pup list, which is fine because if you want him as a late guy and you have an IR spot in your league, put him in that IR spot. That's what I did in our league, and try to see if you can get some production later on in the year. Hollywood's been injured. Darnell Mooney's been injured. Xavier Leggett got in a fight.
Yeah, and it's a funny thing because Pop, he's been one that we've been clicking on a lot recently. Didn't do a ton of him early because we just thought Kyle Williams comes in, Stephon comes in. They're still trying to bake in the Baker and the Polk early investments in from the previous draft, and we were just like, this guy didn't score his rookie season last year. He just scored kind of like a jump ball, get it
Yeah.
underthrown touchdown, and that was
Hmm.
it. And so we were just like, I don't know. But he's apparently been one of the more steady receivers in camp aside of Stephon Diggs. So he, Mac, and Stephon being the 3 wide receiver sets, I just don't think that Mac is a threat to get targets. So really, to me, I just want the safety of if we are high on Drake May, then going Stephon Diggs, Pop Douglas, and then Hunter Henry as a tight end, and I think that's the way to go if you're investing in that Patriot offense. Trey, I'm glad at least that we didn't invest a ton of when he
Hmm.
kind of fell into the 120s because if you situationally, Quinn Johnson isn't, stepping up, Mike Williams retires, and it's just Trey Harris and Lad McConkey. I think there's a high chance that he could have been, a great investment and discounted price. But now that Keenan's there, I think that just caps his upside, and it could be a frustrating rookie season where maybe he's the Rome Odunze role where he's just clearly third wheel on that spoke, and next year that just means that when he is worth being a fifth, sixth rounder, he's starting out in the eighth round, and we can just attack it later on next year.
Yeah, absolutely. I can completely agree with that. Um, it's a tough range, but I think if I'm getting shares, I want Pop Douglas, Brandon Ayuk, and Hollywood Brown. I think those are my 3 guys that I would pick in
Mm-hmm.
this range. So,
Yeah, and Hollywood, surprisingly, like I know he hasn't been practicing because I think he turned his ankle like a week and a half ago, and his ADP's plummeted like 30 spots, and it's like,
hmm.
guys, I mean, Rashid Rice's suspension's still going to be there, so I know it's all of his relevance might be in the first 6 to 8 weeks, But at the same time, when you're a wide receiver 6 and now creeping into being a wide receiver 7 range, like that's the type of things that help get you by in early in the season. So just don't forget about his name if you are in deeper leagues or in best ball.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's go over though. We're going to talk about some tight ends now. The top of the tight end group is, pretty set in stone. Brock Bowers, Trey McBride, George Kittle. All three of these guys have some paths to be wide receiver 2/1s basically on their teams. If you look at just talking about the Raiders literally have no receivers other than Jacoby Myers. We didn't, that's it. And then there's a little bit more target share discrepancy when it comes to Trey McBride, but at the same time, he had the target share last year, even knowing Kyler didn't throw him any touchdowns, and he had to fall in the end zone on the fumble touchdown. Other than that, though, he's got the target share. And then George Kittle, I mean, we talked about it with Ricky Pearsall. There's just a ton of injuries in San Francisco. We just talked about Brandon Ayuk, who's going to be on the pup for the first 4 weeks. He's going to have upside. He always has upside, and he was the best. This is the best tight ends in football. I don't really know
Yeah,
how you get anything better.
and to put it plainly, Brock Bowers is the best investment you can make, but George Kittle is the best value.
Mm-hmm.
All of them should just eat this year, and that's why in most drafts we're getting away with it. I looked the other day, and over 40% of my best ball exposure is to getting one of these three tight ends on DK. Like
I feel like I feel
that's
like
how
mine's got to be more. It's crazy.
I mean, yeah, and I was actually surprised with the lack of George I had, but recently, kind of where I've landed, that's just kind of been what I've been
Hmm.
clicking on. I almost wanted to put George Kittle at 2, just because of the lack of touchdown equity from Trey McBride. But I mean, getting over 50 targets more last year, and maybe that'll kind of reduce a little bit, but he's younger. I think it's a little safer,
Hmm.
but it's baked into price because he's going a full round earlier right now at the 2-3 turn instead of 3-4 turn. And so George Kittle, we've been clicking nonstop. Brock Bowers is kind of those mid round. If we didn't get the receiver we wanted, we're probably clicking his name. So one of those things, if you are going in auction drafts, it is a whole lot of fun seeing what comes off, because we did that last week with our buddy league, and George Kittle was literally the first nomination, and you spent $24 on George Kittle, and everybody was like, "Ooh, that's a lot," and I'm like, "No, y'all just were scared, because watch what the other two go for," and both of the other
Went
two went
40
in the high
plus.
30s, and
Yeah.
so it's just like, once again, even when we're buying players, guess who's the best value on the board? So that's the whole thing of this tier. We wanted as much exposure we could of these three guys this year.
Yeah, I'm trying to get 100% of all three of these guys basically in every draft. But let's go over to tier two because I think tier one's pretty easy. Like we said, I mean, it's the best guys. Tier two
Mhm.
is the next best, obviously. And I think that, this is a little bit more interesting of a tier. You have Sam Laporta, who came off a down season after being the tight end number one, and then also now losing his OC and stuff. It's a situation for sure. TJ Hawkinson had a solid year, got injured, so we have to worry about the injury more than anything. But I actually think there's a lateral movement at quarterback or even an upgrade, so he might be better off. And then Travis Kelsey, we already talked about why Xavier Worthy is going to be good and why Hollywood Brown's going to be good. Well, Travis Kelsey is also probably going to be in that same situation and conversation for why he'll have lots of targets.
Right, right. And with Sam Laporta, he was a very slow burn last year. Started out, obviously, he was the tight end one, and we took a stand on avoiding him last year, and that worked out. But then he started to kind of pour it on the second half of the year with touchdowns and all that stuff. But he does have a ton of target competition. We weren't interested at all early in the summer, but now he's falling into the sixth, seventh round on best ball. So I've started to kind of take some stabs of him, just because I don't hate him as a player. Back-to-back finishes top 8 tight end. Um, it was just a price thing for me. I didn't want to target him in the fifth, sixth round when there was just a plethora of receivers that we could be going with. TJ was the guy that we took the stand on early, and it stayed that way, even in spite of his groin injury he's dealing with, because Jordan Addison, starting the year on suspension, and JJ McCarthy. Guess who was the leading and best receiver for Michigan during their championship year? Colston Loveland. So TJ is poised for a bounce back year after a full season now, recovered from his ACL injury. Kelsey, I think because of the fact of him burning people back to back seasons, or season and a half essentially, uh, the ceiling isn't necessarily consistently there anymore. But I still think he's got a bunch of floor games left in him. And now, if you're getting him around pick 100 in underdog drafts, like that is just I've gotten a ton of him on that platform just because just naturally falling into like, okay, I guess I'll take him and just take a young tight end, and you're baked and solid at your tight end position.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
it's kind of one of those things with redraft feel very, very differently. If this was just a redraft tier, he might even be the tier below because I don't know. I think I can really only trust the five guys in front of him consistently. Just click their names. Don't even draft a
Hmm.
backup, and if they fail you, they fail you. With him, I still think there's a little bit of I don't know which weeks will have the two catches for 12 yards and then the
Right.
boom week, but they're there. Both of them are there, so it's just one of those things.
Yeah, and then I think the next tier is the big boomer bust tier, in my opinion.
Hmm.
Um, when Tyler Warren is a guy, obviously we really like Brock Bowers last year. Tyler Warren's going in the same range this year, so we hope that he can do something similar. I don't think he'll be nearly as good, but he's also got probably better quarterback play than Gardner Minshew and Aiden O'Connell, even knowing it's Daniel Jones and Anthony Richardson. I still think that's a little bit better. Um, Mark Andrews is an interesting one on this list to me because Isaiah Likely being injured. We also talked about the low passing offense that they have, but he actually gets the touchdowns out of all the guys on that team. And then Colston Loveland's a guy that's creeped into this tier that is having a really good camp that I want to talk about also.
Yeah, and with Tyler Warren, it's a fun one because he is actually my most exposed tight end right now. And that's just being I'm comfortable with him being a tight end one in a three tight end build, or my tight end two. If I invested strongly early on, but they early and often in their first preseason game targeted him, let him loose, and so he's cracked the top 100 in ADP. And we just felt good about the stand we took on him because back-to-back years, a rookie tight end was tight end one overall. And I'm not saying it's three straight, but there are two guys in this tier that are capable of at least being top five options in their respective fields. It just is both of them have target competition, and you just don't know truly with the quarterback play what's going to happen with each of them.
Yeah, absolutely. Njoku and Evan Ingram kind of just fall into this tier because they've got targets and situations where they have the opportunity to be the wide receiver two on their team. So they kind of just make it into this tier because of that. Not much to talk about with them though. They're kind of they're capped overall. I don't see them jumping a tier
I,
basically.
I mean, they're very capped. If you look at them, each of them came in 2017. Each of them also only have one season where they've scored more than five touchdowns in a season. And
Right.
for Evan Ingram, that was his rookie season back in 2017. He's been three of the last 4 years less than 9 yards of reception and having no more than four touchdowns in a season. So I wasn't interested at all in him. And now it's just if you go with Bo Nix and you just want another Denver piece, sure. But I
Hmm.
just don't like any kind of upside unless he's going 10 catches for 60 yards and maybe
Sure.
he pops one into the end zone. With David Njoku, it's the most uncertain quarterback room. So on top of him dealing with injuries in, recent years, also lack of touchdown equity, at least Mark Andrews, who had the frustrating start last year, he was a huge plus in the touchdown department. He led all tight ends with 11 touchdowns. The next highest was George Kittle and Jonnu at 8. So
Sure. Yeah.
he's always been the red zone guy for Baltimore. The problem was, hey, Isaiah Likely is coming on, and now Isaiah Likely's hurt.
Yeah.
So he might even start on the pup. So all these trade rumors came into maybe all for naught, and maybe Mark Andrews has one more elite year in him as a tight end.
Something I want to shout out real quick before we go on though is tight ends are really hard this year. When you just talk about overall, like tight ends are last year we thought that it was the year of the tight end. We had a bunch of seventh round tight ends that we were like all excited about. And then they all busted. And this is like where we're like, okay, I think truly trying to get a tier one or tier two player is the key this year. Because I think that, last year really showed us that tight ends will burn you. You'll have That's how you kind of win leagues and stuff at the end of the day. If you can go get a tight end or a quarterback that are single positions and set themselves apart. So I just want to shout that out that, trying to get some of these tier one and tier two tight ends is kind of the way to go. If you don't, this is a really good range to get into. And
Yeah.
then let's get into the really questionable range real quick. Here's tier 4. Some of the guys that did, kind of fall on their face last year. Dalton King, if it did it jump, there it goes. Dalton Kincaid was a guy that we were getting a lot of. He's now fallen into the late one, I don't know, probably 120s on best ball. Tucker Kraft is moving up on best ball, but he also, he was just a question mark because we didn't even know he was going to be the guy. Luke Musgraves was the original guy. Kyle Pitts, I mean, do it again if you want to. Go ahead. Um, Dallas Goedert, Jake Ferg, and then Zach Ertz is getting old. But like all these guys are kind of just like they've had bad seasons, but you've also seen good seasons out of some of. Well, you've expected good seasons or you've seen good seasons out of some of them, if it makes sense.
This is such a fun tier. I
It's
mean,
tough.
it at least it's a discounted price. I mean, this caliber of situation where you have a guy in an offense where you can rival being a number two option in an
Mm-hmm.
offense, which basically everybody except for Dallas Goedert has that role, which he arguably is the most talented of the bunch. He just is in this range because of being the fifth option on a team in terms of scoring and stuff.
Right.
But this tier usually does go in the 70s and 80s because you're gambling, but because all of them failed, all of them are pushed back. So Dalton Kincaid, a former first round pick, even though he's back to being what he is, and there's coaches that are like, hey, I would bet on him if I were you, as finally having the true breakout that you expected. Tight ends sometimes can be a slow burn. It doesn't have to be instant production, even though we have had back-to-back seasons with number one overall tight ends being a rookie. Tucker Kraft, we didn't really get a lot of him early on, but I see the path there. It's just one of those things where a lot of people were. I don't love being in the direction where everybody is on a guy when I view him as the same as these other people.
Sure.
That's calling it a tournament investment is what we'll do when we're doing a weekly DFS. But Kyle Pitts, we've said it every year, but this year at least he's a tight end too. And he was going in the 150s and 160s because people hated him that much. And then now it's like, oh, he's golf buddies with Michael Penix. He keeps on catching touchdowns. He's finally healthy this offseason. And now
Yeah.
he's in the 120s now. So it's like, yes, he was always that guy. It's just he's been frustrating and he hasn't had the quarterback play and he hasn't played well enough. And maybe he'll still bust, but at least this time when you invest in him, a lot of our shares are when we invested with Brock Bowers, George Kittle, Trey McBride, or
Right.
any of these high end guys. So if he fails, who cares? But if he
Yeah.
works out, you got a hell of a tight end room to work with.
Yeah, absolutely. Pretty easy though, like you said, going across. I think Zach Ertz is the most interesting name. I don't remember if he made our top 25 originally. I
So
don't believe
in
so.
our first tight end top 25, he was 21. He was in tier 4. We had a 12-person tier
Yeah,
in the first one because of how big it was. We've condensed it in half because I think some have separated themselves, whereas others have not.
sure.
But because of the Vince in it and just not really pushing him like we thought he could have
Yeah,
early on, and him finishing as strong as he did, it just seems like he's one of the safest plays at price where he was because he was going in the 170s, 180s. Now he's kind of crept up a little bit with Terry McLaurin, just kind of wait and see game. But yeah, I don't know how long it will last because he's the oldest of the bunch.
hmm
But he's worked out for us a ton, and we still think he's got some in the tank as a committee tight end room if you're building that way.
yeah. He is the young tight end killer. He killed Dallas Goddard. He killed a Trey McBride in his past. He is going to continue doing it. It looks like. Let's go over to the last tier though, tier 5. Uh, I want to talk about Janu to start because Janu fell out of tier 3
hmm
because of the fact that he got traded. It was a bad trade for his fantasy value, obviously. And then, you know, tell me who you could see in this group having the highest upside to jump into, say, tier 2 or tier 3.
Well, the answer to that is Isaiah Likely because he was in that tier prior to
Okay,
going down, and because we've seen the 100-yard games, I don't think anybody else is going to not. He didn't consistently do it, but uh, be a red zone threat because of the fact that he is basically their second best receiver and he's their backup tight end. It's one of those things with that. We weren't interested in him at all when he was going in the 120s, but now he's basically back where he was last year. And when you're in the 170s, 180s, I don't care if you're out for the first 4 weeks of the season because I drafted one or two tight ends before you. So
Sure. Yeah.
I like him a lot there. I mentioned Hunter Henry because of the fact that he just seems slow and steady as an option, and with Drake May maybe hopefully bumping and you know arguably doubling his touchdown production this year, maybe that just works even more for Hunter Henry because Hunter Henry was New England's leading receiver, believe it or not, last year. And it's not like he had that hot of a finish. But at the end of the day, we just think he could be a safe option where he's currently going. Um, a lot of these guys have opportunity. Um, Kate Otten was really the only one that really fell in this range, truly, and that's because of the fact that Emeka's just gone so high up. And you think about it, Kate Otten's only relevant games came when multiple of those high end guys above him were out. So he's like the sixth option on a team that, unless he just has the random spike week touchdowns, he could be 3 target a game for the most part, and it'll be frustrating to roster him in redraft leagues. But all these other guys have opportunity. Mason Taylor, we liked a bunch, went down with an injury, but fortunately, he's back better than we expected. Chigo Okonkwo has been playing a ton. Jatavion Sanders has been a bright spot in camp. Brenton Strange is the only tight end is really running with the ones right now for
Hmm.
Jacksonville. So really the only guys that are in a target competition that just isn't a great situation for them are Jonnu and Cade. But everybody else are just young, unproven guys that could just all of them I could see having the 7 to 8 touchdown game. And usually we are pretty good about selecting who those guys are.
Yeah, absolutely. One guy I want to shout out is Mason Taylor. We were expecting him to miss some time. It looks like he is going to be back at practice, so that's good news for him. He is the wide receiver 2 on that team also for the Jets because they do not have anybody else. It's basically Garrett Wilson and Mason Taylor. So I think if you want some upside late, he's one of my favorite guys because he is going at like 190 right now, and that's a
Right.
ridiculous price for a guy that is going to have. He will play probably
Yeah.
90% of the snaps and get targets.
I like these young guys so much that if you did invest in a tight end or a tier one of the tight ends, the Brock, the Trey, the George, you could wait all the way until the 16th, 17th round and snag one of these guys, and I think you're good at tight end.
Yeah,
As long as you don't match the bye weeks, because sometimes like Jatavion George, for example, have the right bye week. The other day we had Trey McBride, and then we went Elijah Arroyo, who just missed out on this list, same bye week, and we're like, ah. So as long as you're looking at those things, I think you're more than fine. Just
right.
sprinkle your exposure to this entire tier and just kind of be over the field to them all, except for if they're just going too high or at price that you just aren't interested in, like a Jonnu Smith, who he's in here kind of by default because he's probably our least interested tight end in the entire top 25. But we just know talent wise, you got to give respect where it's due when he finishes the top 10 tight end last year.
Absolutely. But that is our top 25 of our tight ends and our top 60 from our wide receivers. Let me stop sharing. We appreciate y'all hanging out with us. We've got some stuff coming up. We got the top 25 video for the NCAA coming up. Me and Dustin, Cam and me are gonna be doing all kinds of predictions. We're gonna be doing bold predictions. We're gonna be doing season predictions. We're gonna do power rankings, and then we're gonna get into the season, of course, because that's right around the corner. College football starts in 2 weekends, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
So it'll be here soon, and then we have NFL football starting like September 5th, I believe, is what the date
Yeah,
is.
it's
So
it's three weeks as of this morning. This recording, we're recording on a Thursday, the 14th. So we're getting closer, and I can almost taste it. So I'm excited. We're gonna be doing a whole lot of stuff. We're gonna be grinding the rest of the month, putting out content for you guys. We're excited for it, and we just want you guys to keep on interacting with us. We've been making some friends in best ball streams. We're gonna start posting more and more stuff in Discord. Just kind of start interacting with us. Let us know what you think. Who are the stands that you're taking? We're excited, and we hope you are too.
yeah, we appreciate it, and we will see y'all on the next video.